Today is Wednesday, December 9th, 2020, and welcome to another edition of Wildcat Weekly. Hi, everybody. I'm your host, Joe Kraus. It is great to have you join us once again. Hopefully, you're getting ready for the holiday season. We have another great guest for you in just a moment. But in case you didn't know, Wildcat Weekly is a show where we go one-on-one with your favorite Demon student athletes and coaches to discuss how they're preparing for the upcoming season, their past success here at Demon, and what it's meant to them to be part of the Demon College community. As always, we are across social media. Follow us on Twitter at Damon Athletics. Like our Facebook page, Damon College Athletics. Or on Instagram too now at Damon Athletics. And visit our website, it's DamonWildcats.com. My partner Mike Moranto continues his alumni interviewing series. We have a lot more great content coming up for you to wrap up the year 2020. All that and more on our website, DamonWildcats.com. Now, usually we have on a student athlete or a coach, or as we had last week, our athletic director, Tracy Murphy. But this week, we're going to do things a little bit differently here on the program. Our guest this week has served as the commissioner of the East Coast Conference since 2008 and has been involved in college athletics in the New York City metropolitan area for nearly 40 years. Under his leadership, the ECC has added championship events in men's and women's soccer, lacrosse, indoor and outdoor track, women's bowling, and esports, and the conference has been involved in so many ways in the communities. With a target date of sports returning across ECC soon after the new year, as we've highlighted each week here on the show, we are so thankful that he accepted our invitation and had the time to join us this week to talk about all the things the conference is doing and making sure that things keep moving forward. Please welcome to the show the Commissioner of the East Coast Conference, Dr. Bob Dranoff. And we are joined this week on Wildcat Weekly by the Commissioner of the East Coast Conference, Dr. Bob Dranoff. Commissioner, thank you for joining us this week, and how are you doing today?
Doing all right, Joe. I appreciate the invite. It was nice to hear from you.
So there has been a lot going on since this pandemic began back in March. And I know some of our viewers might shudder when I mention the words the month of March here, but if you wouldn't mind, Bob, if you could just go back to when this whole thing started, um, starting with the NCAA March Madness men's basketball tournament, that was canceled, and it was a domino effect from there. And including the East Coast Conference, the spring 2020 sports were canceled, unfortunately. I guess how would you describe that phone call with the athletic directors of the conference, who then had to tell the coaches and then the student athletes that they won't be able to play their season, and for the seniors, unfortunately, their season was wiped out as well.
Yeah, I try not to remember a lot of that, a lot of those days, but because it seems like it's all just sort of jammed into one time. I'll tell you, what's interesting. I've told this story a couple times. When all this was first starting to come down, we were having our basketball tournament at University District of Columbia, and I had pulled coaches aside. We were first starting to hear about COVID and the problems and hearing what was going on in other leagues and in Division One. And I pulled the coaches together and said, listen, we don't have a ton of precautions here, but one of the things I'm hearing is that we need to be careful with even shaking hands, so do we want to make a decision here that we won't shake hands? And we had a discussion on that, and whatever we ended up deciding, I don't even remember. But it's amazing how 9 months later, we're still worried about social distancing and how we're going to get through this stuff. It was difficult. We got through the basketball. We were getting ready to plan for our women's bowling tournament, ended up having to pull the plug on that, but had no idea that we were then going to be worrying about all of our spring sports. We ended up having to cancel 6 championships in the spring: baseball, softball, men's and women's track and field, women's tennis, and more men's and women's lacrosse. So it was very, it was difficult decisions to make, but honestly, once the NCAA had made those calls, we really didn't have a lot of latitude, and everyone was worried and starting to send their students home and move online. Once we knew that the students the spring student athletes were getting their seasons of eligibility back, I think that made it a little bit easier to make those decisions. Fast forward into the fall, and at least we had a plan in place coming off of the spring, and didn't see much latitude there either. Um, and now we're crossing our fingers that basketball and winter sports will happen. Um, and that's as best as we can do, is plan to move forward and hope that we can make this happen.
Absolutely, that's been the early January target date has been the goal for the teams here at Damon. We had Tracy Murphy on last week, the athletic director here at Damon, Dr. Jeff Sage as well, of making sure the protocols are followed here at Damon as well. You mentioned a moment ago about men's and women's basketball. They're set to be the first sports back in the East Coast Conference in early January. What protocols has the conference set in place to make sure um, all the games are played in a safe manner? Because there has been, I'm sure you're aware, there has been some concern about indoor sports because of this virus. It's more of it's like kind of like a shoebox. It's all with so many people inside.
Yeah.
Um, there's more concern with an indoor sport compared to something outdoors.
Well, a few things. You mentioned Jeff Sage and Tracy Murphy, who have been essential in all the work we've done. Jeff, we have a small committee that are athletic trainers in the conference speak, and then we've created a smaller committee, and Jeff is massively important in that. He's uh, I knew he was smart and talented, but I mean, he's great. And Tracy, as a former athletic trainer, is also somebody great that we could bounce things off of. The conference as a whole, the presidents voted that they would use the NCAA policies as the minimum standard for operating to every degree possible. And so that makes our planning not easier, but at least gives us a direction. And the NCAA has also done an amazing job. Dr. Brian Hainline, who's the director of the Sports Science Institute at the NCAA, has worked. He partners with these national organizations, both in sports and outside, to come up with plans. And it's not a one size fits all kind of plan. You know, uh, Schools have different resources, different sports, different facilities, and so we're going to do the best we can. What I would say to you is that everyone has an idea and a commitment to test, which is going to be a requirement when it comes to basketball, and they're going to abide by the testing policies. I had mentioned to you I was a little delayed in getting on because we're working with our signer for basketball to have a protocol for testing officials. Um, the team, it's going to be important for a team that's hosting a game to know that the team that's coming in is abiding by the policies as well, both screening their student athletes and testing and if positives occur, that they know that there's a quarantine policy in place, um, and a lot of it, honestly, Joe, is going to be these are all going to be a shot that we're giving and trying our best to make sure that we're following the path, knowing that it's not going to be an easy one. We are right now tentatively set to begin our first games on or around January 9, knowing full well that could be bumped later, and we have schools already that are not going to be able to start January 9. So we're going to do our best to get in a good basketball experience for those men and women that are playing. Again, one of the parts of that is that we already know that those team members have gotten their season of eligibility back. So I'm not saying that this is just a throwaway season. This right now it's set to lead to a national championship if they have that ability and that opportunity. So we're going to do our best to give them a good opportunity to play.
Follow up. Why was after New Year's Day chosen to be the start time for the conference schedule instead of trying to proceed sooner, like we've seen elsewhere? For example, the SEC, the the quote unquote Power Five schools. Why was making sure 2021 was the start time for the East Coast Conference?
Well, you've also seen how that's gone for some of those conferences too, with those games that they're trying to get in. Um, uh, some of it, was in reaction to what was going on in other places, other conferences, or both in the region and around the country. Um, a lot of it had to do with, we had schools that at the point when those discussions were occurring had already made a decision to move to online or mostly online classes, which would have meant, um, access to campus would have been difficult anyways. And so we were trying to create as level a playing field in that situation. We thought that January 1 would make sense. And probably a little bit of it was maybe an assumption that things would be better, which we're not sure they will be. Kicking it down the road was probably the best idea at the time. There are maybe two or three conferences in Division II out of the 23 that exist that have started play. I'll just give you an example. The South Atlantic, which is based down in Virginia and the Carolinas, and had begun play a couple weeks ago. And I don't know what the percentage is, but they've had a lot of games canceled already due to positive COVID tests. But there was a plan, and I commend them that they're trying to get it done. We'll just have to see how it goes.
We're joined by Commissioner Bob Dranoff of the East Coast Conference today on Wildcat Weekly. There was also another announcement over the summer, Bob, that because of this switching, the postponing of the winter season to now January, the fall season, as you alluded moments ago, has now been moved to the spring, which means that Demon Volleyball, Demon Men's Women's Soccer, along with the rest of the teams, they're now going to be starting likely early March to mid-April. What were the main factors in making the switch? And is it fair to say that making this switch from having players prepared in the past for a fall sport now have to wait a little bit longer to begin in the spring? Are these uncharted waters? Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah, uncharted is a good way to put it. The concept was a desire by a number of our schools, not all of them, to be able to provide an opportunity for play at some point. Again, those students have gotten their seasons back. And the NCAA had announced that while there won't be championships in those sports that you mentioned, they had expanded the season so that we were able to make those arrangements. We've created a really reduced a reduced plan for play for those schools that wish to play. And we're not mandating schools to play. It wouldn't be like the regular season where if you're a member of the conference and you sponsor the sport, you have to play. So these are non-mandated schedules that'll end up being who is available to play and who can do it. And there's a lot of conditions that may preclude a school from playing, including resource, budget, space. Damon is an example of you don't have a lot of spring sports. We have schools. Mercy College has a field that gets used for men's and women's soccer, men's and women's lacrosse, field hockey, and baseball. They have 6 sports on the same field. I think they're going to be hard pressed to get in soccer, in the fall, in the spring. So I think the idea again was to give an opportunity for those students that were going to be around. They're going to train. They're going to have a chance to compete, and if we have enough, we'll run an ECC championship. It might not be exactly that same championship, but for the schools that are going to play, it gives them something to shoot for.
Fingers crossed for all teams and programs, of course, of getting their seasons going here, after the new year. There was also another interesting, and I commend the East Coast Conference for doing this over the summer as well, starting some specific relay programs for student athletes to improve race relations, and also just many multiple many social issues across the board. That student athletes, especially here at Damon, they've really taken the charge of promoting these. I guess, would you mind explaining what the programs the conference specifically provides to the athletes, and what are maybe the early benefits or results that you've seen since these were implemented?
Um, yeah, thanks for asking about that, Joe. I think that I'm in I think my 13th year as commissioner of this conference. Sometimes I don't remember. Um, and when I took the job, one of the important things for me at that time, and we've continued each year, is um, well, we know that an essential part of what we do is compliance and running championships and monitoring things and helping with schedules. Also, I take very seriously the responsibility from an educational perspective of what we could do to supplement what's happening on campuses and the lives of those student athletes. I come from a background in athletics where I've always worked real closely with student athlete groups to help. I look at it as education. Athletics is a big part of education, and so um, in response to what was going on our in our country and on our campuses back in the summer in response to the deaths of George Floyd and others, we thought that we needed to have a conversation, and that was brought to light to me by both student athletes, coaches, administrators, asking if we were considering doing something to bring different ideas together. And so during the summer, we began with what we called two town hall programs that we organized. Um, to bring different viewpoints in and allow student athletes the opportunity to speak up and some difficult conversations occurred, I think, that focused on um, uh, both students of color, um, perspectives and treatment and concerns with their own campuses and ways that they felt that they could work together to get better. um, Talked about next steps and I guess I always looked at it as, listen, let's give a platform for people to talk and open up ideas on their campuses. Um, the follow up to that was once we started reaching into the fall, we partnered. We felt that there was a need to put together some programming to continue discussions. We partnered with an organization called Rise, which is a national organization that deals with issues of community engagement, social justice, keeping those conversations going. This is an organization that works with a lot of Division I conferences and schools and other D2 conferences like ours, plus professional teams, education. Um, very, I thought, really well done platforms. In all those programs, we had over 125 student athletes come on board to be able to speak and um, ultimately, my hope is our next steps with that group is to start assisting our campuses, our student athlete advisory committees, and other committees that have already been created to deal with diversity and inclusion within athletics, to help guide them, to help build an agenda for them that they could work on. I haven't been on a campus in a long time, and so I don't know all the issues that my athletic director colleagues and other administrators deal with on a daily basis in these issues. But what we can maybe do is help provide resources for guidance and organization. And because I think every school, the reality is the world has changed so much since I got involved in this business 40 years ago. I always thought these issues were important, but the voice needs to be there. I'm also happy that our other two programs we did this semester, besides those with Rise that really dealt with social engagement and social justice, um, we did a program on mental health with Ivy Watts, who's becoming a nationally known speaker. She's a former D2 athlete, student athlete. Um, an immensely important topic. And just last night, we had our final one of the semester, which we kind of went a different direction. That was on career education with DJ Washington, who's formerly with the group Athlete Network, which is a good resource for students. You know, the social issues are immensely important. Getting a job is really important too. And so this was, a good program as well.
That's so huge that you made efforts. The conference has made a big effort in promoting mental health awareness as well as so important, especially right now with this pandemic on top of everything. And again, I commend you and the conference for implementing all of this,
Thank you.
buying it towards the student athletes.
Thanks, Joe.
So Damon College and Roberts Wesleyan College both joined the East Coast Conference at the same time 7 years ago. If you can hardly believe it.
Yeah,
Those
it is pretty amazing.
that have been following all across. It's been exciting, and it really um, expanded the conference from the metropolitan, the New York City area, westward to Western New York, kind of like maybe a mini, westward expansion, if you will, of the conference. And how have their successes, David Roberts Wesleyan, how is their track record leading up to their Division II transition, and now what they have provided to the conference and the area? How has that maybe made Western New York a desirable area to keep expanding? And the main example, the Uville, just up the road from us here, moving up from Division III to Division II now.
Well, essential for our conference. It was, yeah, you're right. I can't believe it's 7 years ago already. When we start, and even prior to that, when we started having the conversations with Roberts and with Damon, um, I was an athletic director in this conference, over 25 years ago. I came into the conference at Dowling College, which doesn't exist anymore. And I've been in Division II for about 25 years now. When I was in the conference with Dowling, we were essentially a New York metro area conference. Probably one of the closest located between institution conferences in the country, in Division II. Mostly Long Island, up a little bit up into Westchester and into a little bit above there and Bridgeport and the conference has changed a lot, and it's been membership is a challenge for us for sure. We are, I think, in a lot of ways, the reality of what small athletic conferences, the challenges we have, and the reality of higher education, which all our institutions have challenges when it comes to enrollment, and funding and things like that. Some have been able to weather the storm. Damon's has great leadership and does an amazing job. We were lucky, honestly, when Roberts and Damon had an interest in transitioning from NAIA to Division II, and had an interest in us. And like you said, that Western expansion has been big for us. In the beginning, our schools were challenged by the trip. Those two schools travel a lot more than the schools down here do, but look at how things have changed. We're really a Long Island-based conference for a long time, and now we have one school left on Long Island. That's just our reality. I give a ton of credit to Dr. Olson, president at Damon, for helping us open the door to Deauville. He had a relationship with President Lori Clemo there, from the Buffalo area, and helped sell the idea to her on Division II. And I'm confident that Deauville will end up being a great member, just like Roberts and Damon are, and will help us grow. And if we could continue to grow in Western New York, that would be a great thing too for the conference. And college athletics, not a lot of conferences change like we do, but it's worked for us. And we got and we lucked out too, because some wonderful leadership on both the athletic end and the upper level administration at all those three schools. It's going to help make us a better conference.
Definitely, of course. I mean, I think there's a lot of buzz again already established here at Damon and Roberts Wesleyan. So hopefully, the buzz from the Uville that I've heard a little bit too, it'll just continue to build up the conference. That's for sure. So we talked about this at the top. The target date for men's basketball and women's basketball is around January 9th. How do you? And I know that there are so many other protocols and other scenarios and factors that are going to determine if we can start on the 9th, that even at the national level. But how do you envision the start of 2021 going for the East Coast Conference? Is there anything else that needs to be done from your perspective, from the schools or even the NCAA to make sure that things go smoothly here?
Um, listen. I think our schools are doing an amazing job. They got tons of challenges figuring out how the whole testing protocols, how they're going to keep their student athletes safe, um, making some decisions about reducing their schedules and reducing their travel and um, I'm just amazed and happy I'm not on campus, to be honest with you, because that's so much work. But um, I think the NCAA is also going through their own. You know, they they, um, they are committed. I think everyone is committed to making sure that, especially in the area of the spring sports, the winter and spring sports that maybe lost championships last year, in the case of the spring athletes, lost their entire seasons, that those things happen. So all those things may look a little different, but I believe that we'll move forward. I mean, a lot of good stuff is happening right now. Crossing our fingers with the vaccines that will come into place at some point. Maybe not soon enough for all our student athletes, but as we begin fall of 21, I'm hopeful that everyone that'll make all those things easier. Um, I shouldn't forget to tell you that while we've had to cancel a lot of our traditional sport championships over this fall, and we have been able to continue our esports efforts. Um, we did run a championship in both Overwatch and the game Valorant during the fall. So those are our two championships that we did have. I know last spring we had a championship out of Damon Esports with our League of Legends, and we're going to continue. We have three games in the spring. So um, that's become at least that's where our growth has been. If all goes well in the spring, we're going to be up to 16 schools playing esports with us. Um, 5 out of the ECC core and a bunch of other members from all over the place. So, um, I'm proud of. I always have to caution people that while I've taken the lead on the esports thing, it's definitely not being done by me because I really don't understand a lot of this stuff. But we're enthusiastic. We have an enthusiastic group of students that are playing the sports on our campuses. They like what we do. We try to treat the esports the way we treat all our other sports and give them recognition and opportunities to play and run championships um, and that's a whole new world. And we're pleased that it's grown, and we look forward to doing good things in that area too. So that'll be something new, and we're hoping that we could run some good events during the spring and get everybody out safe, and then start planning again for the following fall.
Yeah, it's so fantastic that esports has continued to grow. I know a couple of people I know on campus are on the Damon esports team, and it sounds really cool to do. And I hope to check it out rather soon. So for the viewers at home this morning, you're fairly optimistic that we're going to get through maybe not the whole schedule for basketball, but most of it.
Well, the plan is a really reduced schedule. I mean, it's based in the area of 10 or 11 games plus however our tournament is going to look, and we're still trying to figure that out because we need to time it with the NCAA championship. Our goal would be, as long as the NCAA is having a Division II basketball championship, that we'd like to have a way to have representation in there. And so, um, that schedule is as I said, is greatly reduced. I think the opportunities to play outside the conference are going to be very limited, not just because of our schedule, just because the other schools in the region are going to be limited in availability. Um, and so, that'll give them an experience, and so I think that will go through. We're working on our, and then the other point will be in most of our spring sports, um, we'll have reduced schedules also, just because those schedules already have been reduced by the NCAA, the minimum requirements. So I think you'll see much more conference only play as schools move forward, and then hopefully get back to normal in the fall.
We're excited to see all the action. Fingers crossed coming in a few weeks here. Bob Dranoff, the commissioner of the East Coast Conference. Bob, we thank you for your time. Have a safe rest of the year, and we hope the next time we talk, we'll have some game action to talk about. Okay.
That sounds great, Joe. You guys do a great job up there at Damon. I appreciate you thinking of me and asking me to come on, and you were great. So thank you very much.
This concludes another edition of Wildcat Weekly. Thank you all again for joining us. Until next time, I'm your host, Joe Kraus, reminding you to keep on wearing your facial gear, keep washing your hands, keep social distancing, and I'll see you next week. Have a good night, everybody.